Welcome to SEXED, the Sex Ed channel. In this video, we're going to be talking about gender and presentation, and we're going to start by talking about the words we use. Talking about gender can be very confusing, mainly because the language that we're speaking uses the same terms to refer to multiple different things. For a long time, people saw gender in biology as inextricably linked, which meant that not only did your chromosome pattern determine how your body functioned, but it was also supposed to determine a whole host of other things, like how you presented to the outside world and how you behaved and what you liked. Because of that, English tends to mix all these concepts up. When someone says man, they might mean someone with an XY chromosome pattern. Or they might mean someone who behaves like a man in social situations. Or they might mean someone who wears traditionally masculine garb. Or they might mean someone who likes things that guys typically like. Or they might mean someone who thinks of themselves as a man. All of those things have words to describe them. But only the last one is actually gender. A man is someone who thinks of himself as a man. End of story. Add into all this word confusion the fact that none of it is binary. Definition break. Binary is when there are only two options. Light switches are binary. They can be on or they can be off. Non-binary is when there are a range of options. Dimmers are non-binary. They can go from mostly all the way on to very, very dim to very, very bright to completely off. Gender is non-binary. In fact, most of the things that we'll talk about on SEXED are non-binary. They can be plotted on a line or a graph or some sort of multi-dimensional shape like a tesseract. Got it? Okay. Anyway, back to what I was saying. Add into the mix-up over terminology the fact that none of this is binary, and you can see how it starts to get confusing. Society's understanding of gender is evolving faster than our language, so it's up to us to be thoughtful about the words that we choose to use when discussing it. After all, the point of language is to communicate, so we want to make sure we're doing that accurately. What matters in determining gender? When all is said and done, despite the confusion surrounding language, the only thing that matters in determining gender is how any given person feels about themselves, about who they know themselves to be. If you feel like a woman, you're a woman. If you feel like a man, you're a man. If you feel like you're somewhere in the middle and you don't fall close enough to either end of the spectrum to define yourself in such concrete terms, then you call yourself non-binary, and that's what you are. And that's fine. Now, there is some controversy over this at the moment. I want to always be straightforward with you, and I'm not going to lie and pretend that everyone agrees about this. But controversy over evolving social issues is nothing new. The women's movement, the civil rights movement, LGBT rights, they've all had an uphill battle from the beginning. But so far, society is progressing toward open-minded acceptance, even though sometimes it feels really slow. For more on this, look for our upcoming video on trans and cisgenders. Back to the broader topic. I like visual aids, so I'm going to draw a super complex graph for you. Here you go. Isn't it beautiful? Okay. Let me explain. This line here, the x-axis, for those of you who studied geometry in school, runs the spectrum from man to woman. This line, the y-axis, runs the spectrum from masculine to feminine. What's the difference? The x-axis is the representation for gender. It's determined solely by how you feel about yourself and who you know yourself to be. The y-axis is the representation for presentation. It's determined by how you present yourself to the outside world. Now, I've been talking about gender for a while, so let's pause here for a moment to talk about presentation. The interesting thing about presentation is that it relies entirely on what our cultural concepts are for masculine and feminine. And those things change widely over time, even within our own culture, let alone in cultures around the world. Did you know that in Western culture, men were the first to wear high heels? Also pink. What that means is that if you, for instance, really like a short pixie cut and you wear one your entire life, how you appear to be presenting on the spectrum of masculine and feminine can change over time, even though you yourself have remained exactly the same. You haven't changed, but cultural perception has. Alternatively, you can have people who have a fixed point on the gender axis, but slide up and down the presentation axis pretty freely. This happens all the time, particularly like in the first 20 years of our lives. We go through so many versions of who we want to be, and each time our presentation to the world shifts a little bit. And there's nothing wrong with that. We don't owe it to anyone to present ourselves as anything other than what feels natural and comfortable for us. Now, back to our graph. If you take a room full of people and you plot them out, you're going to end up with a wide scatter pattern. C, for instance, who definitely knows herself to be a girl and loves pink and bows and makeup and glitter, would probably place herself in the upper right corner. She's a girl. And for now, at least, she is uber feminine. E knows himself to be a boy, but he's never gone in for traditional masculinity. He likes blue, but he also likes purple, and he grows his hair a little long and wears clips in it and likes cute things. So he'd probably end up in the lower right quadrant, but very close to the gender line. There are other people who are less firmly fixed, both in gender and in presentation, and they might need to circle an area on the chart. Z hovers right around neutral, but some days they feel more like a woman and some days they feel more like a man. And when they dress up, it's pretty much a toss-up whether they're going to show up in a suit or a flowy dress. The important thing here is that there's no place on this graph that you can be wrong. You can be 100% a woman and still want to play football or wear a tuxedo to your prom. You can be 100% a man and wear high heels or dance ballet. Or you can land squarely in the middle of this huge radius that defines who you are and how you feel comfortable. And that's all fine and good. Talking about it for real. That's all great academically, but here's what it means in the real world. First and foremost, it means that you should feel comfortable to be who and what you are without any shame in that. Second, it means that there might be times that you're really confused about how to address someone or how to refer to them. That's fine. It's not your fault that our language is gendered. And there's some really easy ways to handle that. The easiest is to ask someone what pronouns they prefer. Someone who considers themselves a man will probably say he, him, his. Someone who considers herself a woman will probably say she, her, hers. People who are non-binary will often go with they, them, theirs. Probably our language will evolve to settle on one accepted set of gender-neutral pronouns over time. But for now, just go with what people tell you. When in doubt, they has a long and well-documented history as a gender-neutral pronoun in English. So, if you don't know and you can't ask, stick to they. Now, I can hear some of you going, okay, but what about penises and vaginas? That, my friends, falls under the category of anatomy and assigned sex, and we'll be talking about that in our next video. For now, hit me up with all your gender-related questions in the comments, on Facebook, or on Twitter. And until next time, keep educating yourself.